The coffee was still hot. The building had been empty for 6 hours. Sarah Caldwell stood in the third-floor break room at 6:47 a.m., staring at steam rising from a full carafe. She was always first. Every morning for 6 years. She had the only key. But someone had been here. She found the note on her desk 30 seconds later. Yellow, sticky note, blue ink, handwriting she didn't recognize. Don't go to the basement. The Whitmore building had no basement. Sarah had worked here long enough to know every floor, every closet, every corner. There was no basement. She checked the stairwell anyway. Below the ground floor, the stairs kept going. Down into darkness. Down to a place that wasn't supposed to exist. When investigators finally pieced together what happened that morning and why it took 3 years to find the truth, they uncovered something that had been buried since 1952, something that was never supposed to be disturbed. If you want to understand why Sarah Caldwell's routine morning became one of Portland's strangest unsolved mysteries, hit that like button and let me walk you through what she found in the place that shouldn't exist. To understand why Sarah Caldwell's discovery unraveled the way it did, you need to understand the building itself. The Whitmore building was constructed in 1952, a 6-story post-war structure tucked into Portland's Old Town district. It had the bones of mid-century optimism: large windows, Art Deco trim, terrazzo floors in the lobby. But by 2013, it had become just another aging office building, home to a patchwork of small firms. Accountants, insurance agents, a law office on the 5th floor. Harmon and Associates occupied the entire 3rd floor. It was a mid-sized firm, 12 employees, specializing in small business tax preparation. Quiet work, predictable work, the kind of place where nothing ever happened. Sarah Caldwell had been the firm's receptionist since 2007. She was 30 years old, efficient, well-liked. She lived alone in a studio apartment in the Pearl District, rode her bike to work when it wasn't raining, and prided herself on her routines. She arrived early because she liked the stillness. She liked being the one who opened the day. That Tuesday started like any other. She left her apartment at 6:30 a.m., locked her bike to the rack outside the Whitmore building, and took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The building had a night security guard, a retired transit worker named Donald Meeks, but he only patrolled the ground floor and lobby. The upper floors were left to their own devices after 10 p.m. When Sarah unlocked the glass doors and stepped inside, the lights were off. That was normal, but the air felt different, warmer, like someone had been breathing in it. She walked to the break room and stopped. The coffee maker was on. Fresh coffee, still brewing. Her first thought was that someone had forgotten to turn it off the day before, but that didn't make sense. The machine had an automatic shutoff, and even if it didn't, the coffee would have evaporated or burned by now. This was fresh. Sarah checked her phone. 6:47 a.m. She was exactly on time. She was always exactly on time. She walked back to the reception area and checked the sign-in log. Every visitor to the 3rd floor was supposed to sign in. The last entry was from the previous afternoon, a client meeting at 3:15 p.m. Sarah stood there, staring at the blank line where today's date should have started. That's when she noticed her desk. The yellow sticky note was placed directly in the center of her keyboard. It hadn't been there yesterday. She was certain. She always cleared her desk before leaving. The handwriting was unfamiliar, neat, but hurried. The message made no sense. Don't go to the basement. Sarah worked in the Whitmore building for 6 years. She knew every hallway, every storage closet, every stairwell. There was no basement. The building's lowest level was the ground floor, which housed the lobby, a small cafe, and a shared restroom. There were utility tunnels beneath the building, old steam pipes and electrical conduits, but those were sealed off decades ago. No one had access. Sarah folded the note and slipped it into her pocket. Then she did something she'd never done before. She called Donald Meeks, the night security guard. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice thick with sleep. Yeah. Donald, it's Sarah from Harmon and Associates. Did anyone come up to the 3rd floor last night? A pause. No. Why? Someone made coffee and left a note on my desk. That's not possible. I locked up at 10. No one's been in or out. Are you sure? I'm sure. I checked every floor before I left. You're the first one in. Sarah thanked him and hung up. She stood there, staring at the coffee maker, the sticky note burning a hole in her pocket. Then she did what anyone would do. She went looking. Sarah started in the break room. She opened every cabinet, checked the refrigerator, looked under the sink. Nothing out of place. The coffee maker was a standard office model. 10 years old, stained, reliable. She unplugged it and felt the carafe. Still warm. She moved to the hallway, flipping on lights as she went. Harmon & Associates had 11 offices, a conference room, a file storage room, and a small supply closet. Sarah checked every door, all locked. She used her master key to unlock the first office, Martin Harmon's, the senior partner. His desk was clean, his computer off, the blinds drawn. Nothing unusual. The second office belonged to Rebecca Yates, the firm's lead accountant. Same story. Neat desk, dark monitor, closed blinds. Sarah moved through the rest of the offices, one by one. Every space was exactly as it should be. Untouched, waiting for the workday to begin. She checked the conference room. Empty. The file storage room. Locked. The supply closet. Full of paper and toner cartridges, but no signs of disturbance. By the time she finished, it was 7:15 a.m. The sun was starting to break through the clouds, casting pale light through the windows. Sarah stood in the middle of the reception area, her heart beating faster than it should. Someone had been here. Someone had made coffee, left a note, and disappeared. She pulled out her phone and called Martin Harmon. He answered on the second ring, already awake, already annoyed. "Sarah, it's 7:15. What's wrong?" She explained. "The coffee, the note, the empty offices." Martin was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed. "Did you check the bathrooms?" "No." "Check the bathrooms. Then check the stairwells. If you don't find anything, lock up and wait for me. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Sarah hung up and walked to the restrooms. There were 2, men's and women's, located near the elevator bank. She pushed open the women's room first. Empty. Then the men's. Also empty. She stood in the hallway, staring at the door to the stairwell. The Whitmore building had 2 staircases, one on the east side, one on the west. They were rarely used. Everyone took the elevator. Sarah hadn't been in a stairwell in months. She pushed open the east stairwell door. The air inside was cooler, tinged with the smell of concrete and old paint. The stairs descended into shadow. She flipped the light switch. Nothing happened. Sarah pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating chipped paint and rusted railings. She started down. The stairs creaked under her weight. She descended slowly. 1 floor, then another. The second floor. The first floor. The ground floor. Then she saw it. Below the ground floor, the staircase continued. Another set of stairs descending into darkness. Sarah stopped. Her breath caught. The building had no basement. But the stairs kept going. She stood there, gripping the railing, her phone's flashlight trembling in her hand. The sticky note in her pocket suddenly felt heavier. "Don't go to the basement." Sarah turned and ran back up the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the confined space. She burst through the third-floor door, gasping, her hands shaking. When Martin Harmon arrived 20 minutes later, she told him everything. He didn't believe her. Martin Harmon was 53 years old, pragmatic, and deeply uninterested in drama. He'd built his firm on consistency and calm, and the last thing he wanted was a panicked receptionist telling him there were secret staircases in a building he'd leased for over a decade. "Sarah," he said, setting his briefcase on her desk, "there's no basement. I've seen the building plans." "I saw stairs," she insisted, "below the ground floor. They keep going." Martin sighed and walked to the break room. He unplugged the coffee maker, felt the carafe, and frowned. "This is warm. I know. Did you make this? No. He looked at her. Then who did? Sarah pulled the sticky note from her pocket and handed it to him. Martin read it, his frown deepening. Where did you find this? On my desk. When I came in. Martin folded the note and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Show me the stairwell. They walked to the east staircase together. Martin pushed open the door and flipped the light switch. The lights flickered on, illuminating the concrete stairs. Lights are working, he said. They weren't earlier. Martin started down the stairs without waiting for her. Sarah followed, her pulse quickening. They descended past the second floor, the first floor, the ground floor. Then Martin stopped. Below the ground floor, the staircase ended. There was no additional set of stairs, just a solid concrete wall with a faded sign, basement access, authorized personnel only. But there was no door, no opening, just wall. Martin turned to Sarah. There's no staircase. There was, she whispered. He studied her for a long moment. Go home. Take the day off. You're stressed. I'm not... Sarah. His voice was firm. Go home. She left. But she didn't go home. Sarah spent the rest of that Tuesday morning in a cafe 2 blocks from the Whitmore building, staring at her phone, replaying everything in her mind. The coffee, the note, the stairs that descended into nothing. She couldn't shake the feeling that she'd missed something. At noon, she walked back to the building. She didn't go up to the 3rd floor. Instead, she went to the basement cafe on the ground floor, a small coffee shop that served the building's tenants. The barista was a college student named Tyler. Sarah ordered a latte and asked him a question. Has this building always had 6 floors? Tyler shrugged. I think so. Why? Do you know if there's a basement? Not that I've seen, but there are tunnels. Old steam tunnels. They used to connect all the buildings downtown back in the 50s. Most of them are sealed now. Do you know how to access them? Tyler looked at her like she'd asked him to rob a bank. No idea, and I wouldn't recommend it. Those tunnels are probably full of asbestos and rats. Sarah thanked him and left. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in her studio apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying the morning over and over. The coffee, the note, the stairs. At 2 a.m., she got out of bed, opened her laptop, and started searching. She found an archived article from the Portland Tribune, dated June 1953. The headline read, New office building opens in Old Town. Whitmore building celebrated for modern design. The article described the building's construction, its 6 floors, its Art Deco facade. But buried in the 3rd paragraph was a single sentence that made Sarah's blood run cold. The Whitmore building was constructed on the site of the former Portland Underground, a network of tunnels and basements used during Prohibition. Sarah kept digging. The Portland Underground wasn't a legend. It was real. During Prohibition, from 1920 to 1933, Portland's Old Town district had been a hub of illegal activity. Speakeasies, smuggling operations, and Shanghaiing rings operated in a network of tunnels and basement passages that connected bars, hotels, and boarding houses. After Prohibition ended, most of these tunnels were sealed or forgotten, but some remained. Sarah found a map, a hand-drawn schematic from a 1978 urban exploration zine. It showed the approximate locations of Old Town's underground passages. One of them ran directly beneath the Whitmore building. She printed the map and circled the building's location. Then she did something impulsive. She called Donald Meeks, the night security guard. Donald, it's Sarah again. I need to ask you something. Have you ever been in the basement? I told you there's no basement. But there are tunnels under the building, old tunnels. A long pause. Who told you that? I found it online. Articles from the 50s. Donald sighed. Yeah, there are tunnels, but they're sealed. Have been for decades. Have you ever been inside them? Once, years ago, when I first started working here. The building manager showed me. There's a hatch in the utility room on the ground floor. Leads down to an old access corridor. But it's locked, and it's not safe. Where's the key? Sarah, you're not... Where's the key? Another pause. The building manager has it, but I'm telling you, don't go down there. Those tunnels are condemned. Sarah thanked him and hung up. The next morning, she arrived at the Whitmore building at 6:45 a.m. She didn't go to the third floor. Instead, she went to the ground floor utility room, a cramped space near the elevator bank, filled with circuit breakers and cleaning supplies. In the far corner, half hidden behind a stack of mop buckets, was a metal hatch in the floor. Sarah knelt down and tried the handle. Locked. She stood up, her mind racing. She needed the key. But the building manager, a man named Gregory Howe, wouldn't be in until later. Then she remembered something. Donald Meeks had mentioned that he'd been down in the tunnels once, which meant he'd had access, which meant he might still have a key. Sarah called him again. Donald, do you still have a key to the tunnels? Sarah, I already told you. Do you have the key? A long, frustrated sigh. Yeah, I have it, but I'm not giving it to you. I just want to look. Just for a minute. Why? Because someone left me a note telling me not to go to the basement, and I need to know why. Silence. Then quietly. Meet me at the building in 10 minutes. Donald Meeks was a large man in his mid-60s, with a gray beard and the wary eyes of someone who'd seen too much. He met Sarah in the ground floor lobby, holding a small brass key. 5 minutes, he said. That's it. Then we're locking it back up. They went to the utility room together. Donald unlocked the hatch and pulled it open. A ladder descended into darkness. Sarah climbed down first. Donald followed, holding a flashlight. The tunnel was narrow, lined with old brick and rusted pipes. The air smelled of mildew and decay. The ceiling was low. Donald had to hunch. They walked for maybe 30 feet. Then the tunnel opened into a larger space, a small vaulted chamber with a dirt floor. In the center of the chamber was a table, and on the table was a coffee maker, still plugged in, still warm. Sarah stood frozen, staring at the coffee maker. It was identical to the one in the third floor break room. Same brand, same model, same decade-old stains. Donald stepped forward, his flashlight beam sweeping the chamber. What the hell? On the table, next to the coffee maker, were 3 styrofoam cups. One was half full, the coffee inside still lukewarm. Beside the cups was a stack of yellow sticky notes and a blue pen. Sarah picked up the pen. It was the same one, the same ink. Someone's been down here, she whispered. Donald circled the chamber, his flashlight illuminating the walls. They were covered in markings, dates, names, tallies. Some were old, scratched into the brick decades ago. Others were fresh, written in chalk. One name appeared over and over. Evelyn. Who's Evelyn? Sarah asked. Donald didn't answer. He was staring at something in the corner of the chamber, a narrow passage that led deeper into the tunnels. We need to leave, he said. But now, Sarah. They climbed back up the ladder and sealed the hatch. Donald locked it and pocketed the key. His hands were shaking. What did you see? Sarah asked. Nothing. We saw nothing. And you're not going back down there. But Sarah couldn't let it go. That night, she returned to her laptop and searched for the name Evelyn. She cross-referenced it with the Whitmore building, the Portland Underground, Old Town. She found dozens of results. Evelyns who'd lived in Portland over the decades. But one name stopped her cold. Evelyn Marsh, born 1898, died 1952. According to a brief obituary in the Oregon Journal, Evelyn Marsh had been a seamstress who worked in Old Town during Prohibition. She disappeared in 1933, the same year Prohibition ended. Her body was never found. The case was never solved. Sarah kept reading. There was a follow-up article from 1952, the year the Whitmore building was constructed. During excavation, workers had uncovered a sealed chamber in the old tunnel network. Inside, they found human remains. The remains were identified as Evelyn Marsh. The article didn't say how she died, but it noted that she'd been found with a small personal item, A brass key. Sarah's pulse quickened. She searched for more information, but found nothing. The story had been buried, forgotten. The next morning, Sarah didn't go to work. Instead, she went to the Portland City Archives. She requested the building permits for the Whitmore Building's construction. It took 2 hours, but she finally found what she was looking for. A handwritten note attached to the original permit application: basement chamber sealed per city ordinance. Contents removed. Site deemed safe for construction. But there was a second note, added later in a different hand. Contents not removed. Chamber resealed per owner request. Key retained by night security. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the words. The chamber had been resealed. The contents, whatever they were, had been left inside, and the key had been given to the night security guard. Donald Meeks had the key. Sarah confronted him that evening. He was sitting in the lobby, reading a newspaper, when she walked in. "You knew," she said. "You knew about Evelyn." Donald looked up slowly. His face was pale. "How did you—" "The archives. The chamber was never emptied." "And you have the key." He folded the newspaper and set it aside. "Sit down, Sarah." She sat. "I've worked here for 19 years, Donald said quietly. "When I started, the building manager told me about the tunnels, about the chamber, about what they found in 1952. He said the owners decided to leave it sealed, out of respect. They thought it was better to let her rest." "But someone's been down there," Sarah said. "Someone's been making coffee, leaving notes." Donald nodded. "I know." "Who?" He looked at her for a long time. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph. It was old, black and white, creased at the edges. It showed a young woman in a 1930s-style dress, standing in front of a brick building. "This is Evelyn Marsh," Donald said. "The building manager gave this to me when I started. Said she used to work in the tunnels during Prohibition, made coffee for the workers, kept the place running." Sarah stared at the photograph. "And you think she's still—" "I don't know what to think," Donald said. "But every few years someone finds fresh coffee down there. Or a note. Always the same message. Don't go to the basement. It's like she's warning people. Keeping them away." Sarah felt a chill run through her. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because most people don't see it. Most people don't notice, but you did. You opened the door, and now she's trying to close it." Sarah Caldwell never went back into the tunnels, but she never forgot what she'd found. In the months that followed, she did her own quiet investigation. She talked to former employees of the Whitmore Building, people who'd worked there in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Almost all of them had a story. A cup of fresh coffee left in a strange place, a note on a desk, a feeling of being watched, but no one had ever gone looking. No one had ever followed the clues. Sarah compiled everything she'd learned into a document: dates, names, articles, photographs. She submitted it to the Portland Historical Society. In 2016, 3 years after that October morning, the Society published a small exhibit on the Portland Underground. Evelyn Marsh was featured prominently. The exhibit noted that her death had never been fully explained. But it also noted something else. During Prohibition, Evelyn had worked as a courier in the tunnels, helping smuggle goods and people through the underground network. She'd been known for her vigilance, her caution, her refusal to let anyone venture too deep into the dangerous passages. The exhibit concluded with a single line: "In death, as in life, Evelyn Marsh remained a guardian of the underground." Sarah left Harmon & Associates in 2014. She moved to Seattle, took a job at a tech startup, started a new chapter of her life. But every October 15th, she thinks about that morning. The hot coffee, the yellow note, the stairs that led into darkness. She thinks about Evelyn Marsh, a woman who spent her life trying to keep people safe, a woman who, even in death, couldn't stop. The Whitmore Building still stands in Portland's Old Town. The tunnels beneath it remain sealed, and every few years, someone reports finding a cup of fresh coffee in a place it shouldn't be. If you ever find yourself in an old building, arriving early, walking into a space that feels just a little too warm, just a little too lived in, pay attention. Because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it lingers. Sometimes it tries to warn you. And if you ever find a note that says, "Don't go to the basement," maybe you should listen. Because some doors were never meant to be opened.